And for more on the Mekong region, I'm joined by Sung Won Sohn. He's a professor of economics at California State University, Channel Islands. Thanks for joining us, Professor.
Yeah, thank you.
Leaders from China and the 5 Southeast Asian nations, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam, have been meeting at the Lancang Mekong Cooperation Summit. What is the main objective here?
Main objective is to grow economies, not only for China, but also for the 6 nations involved. When you do more trade, that means more economic growth. Also, in this particular case, there will be significant infrastructure developments. The rivers, the roads, the highways, and then maritime ports, and etc. That means you're spending money, and spending money means economic growth and also more jobs. So it is a win-win situation for all the countries involved here.
All right, well, let's focus a bit on the Mekong River. One of the goals of the summit is to create a water management plan that benefits all the relevant countries. What are the big obstacles here?
Well, the big obstacles are clearly cost. Developing highways and waterways in that region is not that cheap, and then so who's going to pay for it? That is important. Fortunately, China has already said that it will put a significant portion of the cost. Hopefully that we will see that being built. But at the same time, once the development takes place, trade will become a lot easier. China, for example, wants to export manufactured goods. And the other nations, they are less developed than in China. And they have agricultural products, primary manufacturing, and then commodities, and they want to sell some of those to China as well. So it will be a two-way trade, which will be facilitated by the infrastructure development that we are talking about here.
Certainly a lot of upsides. I want to talk a little bit about a contentious issue, and that is China, which has built several dams along part of the Mekong River that flow through the country. Now, China says it is entitled to do this. No other countries border the river there. And to help with the recent drought, China has released more water from the dams to flow downstream. But some critics say that China is exploiting its position upstream and has gained enormous leverage over the downstream countries by taking control over their primary water sources. What do you say to that?
Well, it is true that water comes from China, from the mountains in Yunnan, and then comes through down through the Mekong River. But I think the economic development in those countries, from Laos to Vietnam, Myanmar, and etc., and Cambodia, that is also very important for China. So I think that China is looking at really the bigger picture, how to improve economic conditions and development, create more jobs in the region. So that would be a win-win situation. So I don't think we should simply look at water supply and then who controls it and then who gets what. But again, the overall objective is to get more economic growth and create more jobs and do more trade, which will benefit not only China, but also the nations here involved.
Well, there is the issue of the water cooperation. You mentioned Laos. Laos plans to build dams on the Mekong. That could potentially spark conflicts with Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. How does that get resolved?
Well, I'm not sure how that gets resolved, but water is a very obviously contentious, serious issue. We have the same problem in the western part of the United States. I'm in LA, and we have very, very short of water. And so I'm not surprised that we have water problems in Mekong River, and that is really the main highway, the lifeline of Southeast Asia. Without water, you're not going to survive. You're not going to create a lot of jobs, and then so for economic development, you need water. So I think, again, I'm not a politician, so how that will be resolved, but I think it's important for them to cooperate so that they all live together, grow the economy, and to do that, you need more water.
Well, there's also cooperation in terms of connectivity. There's a big push to increase connectivity. China has offered loans and credit lines of around $11.5 billion. How do you see those funds being implemented?
Well, I think in a number of ways. First of all, developing infrastructure such as highways and waterways and seaports, even rail lines and then power lines. And then so I think infrastructure that is very important. And I'm sure some of that money, in fact, a significant portion of the money will be spent along the Mekong River where much of the economic activities are in that region. And again, the net result of that is Cambodia, Laos, and even Vietnam, some of these countries will be able to create more jobs and then do more trade and be able to sell more goods that they have. So I think infrastructure development is really key to economic development and more trade, and therefore overall economic growth, which creates more jobs in that region. So I think China's offer to lend them $11.5 billion, so that is key, because without that, I'm not sure where the money would come from for the development that we are talking about here.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there, Professor. Thank you so much. Sung Won Sohn, Professor of Economics at California State University.